Communication Manager 5.2.1 had existed, and Avaya Aura was this brand that was kind of slapped on top of that environment. And that environment stayed the same. It was really still the those of you that had invested in kind of the voice over IP hub and spoke model. It was really that same type of model with the new name, with the forecast of products coming down the pipe, right, in this kind of roadmap to Avaya Aura, to SIP-based architecture. That roadmap has matured. The products are available today, and that's why we wanted to go through a little deep dive session with existing customers, maybe prospective customers, and really just provide some information on the entire architecture as a whole. Had a few technical difficulties there. Sorry about that. So, like I was mentioning kind of during the introduction there, the four main core components to this architecture: the session manager, the system manager, the communication manager, and the system platform. We're going to start by reviewing the session manager. And the session manager is kind of a confusing piece by itself. It doesn't make phone calls, doesn't handle emails. Is it actually managing anything? What does it actually do? It's kind of the question that we get out there today from our customers. And really, think about the session manager as just the piece that initiates the communication between your environment and other applications. So the session manager is really just kind of the traffic cop, if you would, in between a whole bunch of devices on your network. And that could be your communication manager, that may be a Microsoft environment that you have, it may be some other third-party UC applications that you're using, voicemail, things like that. The session manager is just the traffic cop. It initiates and ends engagements between applications on your network. Some of the stuff, key points in Release 6 for the Session Manager. Obviously, some of the scalability has increased up to 50,000 SIP endpoints, as well as some of the key features for survivability. You can now have up to 6 active Session Manager instances. And there's also evolutionary communication deployment options, which I'll get into when we talk about the Communication Manager portion. And for those of you that are existing Nortel, the Session Manager does integrate the CS1000, CS2100 platform, and going forward, it will continue to support the existing Nortel environment through that Avaya acquisition. So, again, just to review, Session Manager, think of it as the traffic cop. It's initiating and it's ending engagements with applications on your network, and that could be a phone call, an instant message, an email, a voicemail, whatever that engagement is. It's the traffic cop. Now the system manager, this is another core component for us in the Aura architecture, and it actually is very important. Like I was mentioning before, the session manager is really just the traffic cop. It doesn't make any decision for itself in terms of who it accepts SIP invitations from or not. It receives the invitation. Based on the URI, it sends that packet on its way to whatever application it's going to, and that's its job. It doesn't need to be a smart device. It just has to be that traffic cop. Now the system manager, though, the system manager is actually the management tool that supports the session manager, communication manager, messaging platforms, communication manager, messaging, as well as conferencing and presence services. So this is where session manager knows who and what it registers with. If it receives a packet from a device that is not within System Manager, well then it's not going to know where that packet's supposed to go. The System Manager is actually the brains of the operation for the Session Manager. Within System Manager, you do things like build custom routing events. If you want to do routing based on location, or you want to adjust your SIP header to something custom to accommodate dial plans, right? One of the big things is multi-site dial plans can now be handled within the Avaya Aura Core, eliminating the need for complicated dial plans within Communication Manager. You can adjust the SIP headers to accommodate that, or you can route by location. As long as the device is registered within System Manager, Session Manager will be able to manage the traffic between that device and wherever else you're sending it to on your network. Some of the biggest key features, though, with the System Manager is the fact that you can manage your entire enterprise Avaya applications or Nortel applications, because Nortel is integrated into this now, from one location. So the System Manager actually has a feature where it can synchronize with your Communication Manager or with your CS1000, and it can, you can build your stations in here. You can build your voicemail message boxes. You can build out your UC applications. The System Manager is essentially a central management tool for all of your Aura applications. And I've been talking a lot in terms of engagement between Session Manager, System Manager, and Communication Manager. And those of you that are familiar with the Avaya Aura architecture know that Communication Manager is a piece of the core. And if you've been a previous Avaya customer, prior to the kind of the Aura era, Communication Manager has been around for a long time. It's been kind of the core operating application for telephony for the Avaya platform. Some of the updates here in Release 6, it's definitely become a flexible revision of core voice, and also supports video telephony as well now. The biggest thing in the Avaya Aura Communication Manager Release 6 is that there's now kind of 3 flavors of how you can deploy this, right? For those of you that may be sitting on let's say, Communication Manager 3.0, or maybe you're a legacy Definity G3R, not a Communication Manager at all, or maybe you're a Nortel Meridian platform or something like that. There is a building block approach to this, and the reason I say that is the next logical step for you could be a Communication Manager 5.2.1. Now you might be asking yourself, well, wait a minute, you're showing me 6.0. So Communication Manager 5.2.1 was really the first step towards the Aura architecture. It allowed you to take advantage of some of the new enterprise offerings of Communication Manager, like the UC application bundles, as well as it allows you to utilize the Session Manager more from just the standpoint of using it for SIP trunking, right? So maybe in the past you were not taking advantage of SIP trunking or SIP routing. Well, now you could upgrade to CM 5.2.1. You could throw in a Session Manager and a System Manager and start taking advantage of SIP on your front end, and then also keep your investment of your existing environment, that exists today. So you kind of take, one building block forward in that model. And I'll go into that model here in a minute. It's called an access element. The next flavor is the Evolution Server. The Evolution Server really starts breaking into SIP endpoints with a mix of non-SIP endpoints. Again, you can layer in legacy with new equipment, take advantage of the Session and System Manager. And the biggest thing is you can start actually using the System and Session Manager to start managing your applications, right, that we talked about before. And Communication Manager now becomes one of those application managers. Now, the feature server, that's kind of the last step on your building block. That's kind of the last step on your building block, is the feature server. The feature server is for the customer that wants to get 100% into SIP. Their entire network is SIP, and I'll show you this model, and basically what happens is your entire telephony and network space becomes one giant SIP application, and we'll dive a little deeper into that. Element in the CM 5.2.1. And if you notice this architectural diagram, like I was saying before, you can take advantage of the Session Manager, you can take advantage of the System Manager, but you're going to still keep non-SIP endpoints on your on kind of the back end of your network. So the session manager and system manager would be considered the front end, and then your existing environment and your CM 5.2.1 would become your back end, right? Now you also notice this circle down here that shows SIP endpoints, and though that is accurate, you can absolutely use SIP endpoints in this environment. The difference would be you would have to layer in what they call an SES, which would be the SIP enablement server. The SIP enablement server was kind of the precursor to the Avaya Session Manager and System Manager configuration, mainly used for enabling SIP trunking either from your carrier or between third-party endpoints, or between two Avaya locations. You could utilize an SES to take advantage of internal SIP trunking. And you'll notice in this access element page that you can do SIP endpoints utilizing an SES on your back end. This is more on the access element. Again, if you're used to the hub and spoke model, this is still the hub and spoke model. The hub now becomes the session and system manager, and your communication manager acts as the spoke. This approach allows you to start integrating existing CMs into the Avaya Aura architecture. Notice if you're used to using an AES, application enablement server, for things, let's say call recording or third-party integrations, all that functionality still works. So your TSAPI and things like that are all still working in this model. Non-SIP endpoints do work in this model. So a big thing with customers is I've invested in thousands of desk phones. I want to be able to reuse them. You can reuse them in this model. SIP endpoints will only work with the SES. So that's a big difference. When you go forward into the feature server model, your SIP endpoints, they register with the session manager, and we'll get into the differences there as I go forward into this. Again, if it's going to be a brand new implementation for you, and you have the investment to make, then it's probably not the model, since there is CM 6.0. But if you're looking to take a building block approach, maybe start building some new business process around the SIP architecture and start training your internal engineering on SIP architecture, this is definitely the investment path for you. So kind of the next building block. So if we picture this building block approach as block 1, block 2, block 3, block 2 is we're going to talk about the evolution server. You can see it here on the architectural diagram, and you'll notice that it looks fairly similar to the access element. If you notice on the bottom right, the SIP endpoints, they're no longer registering to the SES. They're registering directly into the session manager. And that's one of the major differences here. In the access element model, you cannot take advantage of the functionality that you receive from the session manager. You have to utilize the SES to enable SIP. So number one, you have a little bit bigger hardware footprint, but also let's talk about licensing and things like that with an SES that you have to accommodate. Going into the evolution server model, SIP endpoints register directly to the session manager. Notice you can still keep your existing investments, though, that you have already made in some of your non-SIP endpoints, some of your gateways, and the AES. Again, like I just said, the AES applications, if you're using them today, they still work in the evolutionary model. Now you'll notice this term, or this acronym here, ACE. ACE applications and Avaya Aura Contact Center can be supported. That's a big deal. We'll talk a little bit about ACE later on in the presentation around its web services and SOA development type functionality that it brings to the table for the Avaya Aura architecture. And we're definitely going to dive into the Avaya Aura Contact Center. Notice in the access element side, the Avaya Aura Contact Center is not supported. So, and the reason for that is the Avaya Aura Contact Center is a SIP registration, SIP application-based contact center. So going forward, to take advantage of Avaya Aura Contact Center, you have to upgrade to the evolutionary server. Some of the customers that are taking advantage of this are ones that that may have been on 5.2.1 for the past few years and are looking to move forward in their SIP architecture, as well as customers that have heavy integration with things like OCS, the same time or like presence type services. And also those of you that have made investments in some of the G650 hardware models or some of the older 248 gateways, this model works. You can do mix and matching of endpoints and gateways, SIP, non-SIP. You can take advantage of your existing investments, and you can start building out your SIP architecture into the future. And then kind of the third building block here that we're going to look at is the feature server. This is the block where you become completely SIP across your entire network. Everything, if you can notice, everything's kind of in your core there, and everything really becomes an application. And we'll go through this a little bit in depth on how this whole feature server functionality works. Again, notice all the connectivity to the core is SIP, only SIP endpoints, only SIP trunks. Any non-SIP equipment, yes, it can work, but if you notice, it must be front-ended with a SIP gateway. So there are a lot of customers that are doing this today. They may have a remote site that is digital or even analog, and they're putting in a SIP gateway in front of it to handle the SIP trunking to communicate with the core, and obviously they're still taking advantage of what they have at their remote location. Full application sequencing. So sequencing calls between locations works 100%. Sequencing calls between endpoints on the same communication manager works 100%. And then obviously there's more development in the future. If we talk about sequencing a little bit, you're really kind of talking about applications. So think about today if you have buttons on your phone, and you may have a call forward button, or some of you may have an actual call record button if you're doing call recording, things like that. In the feature server model, those are now considered applications, right? And today they are kind of, but you have this physical button on your phone. Yeah, they're not built the same way. In the feature server model, you're talking about everything within your environment is application based. And then again, target customers for this, or customers that are taking advantage of this today, happen to be, they want to be all SIP, they have heavy application needs, and a lot of IT organizations are moving this direction, right? There's been a push in the market for service-oriented architecture, which we'll dive into in a little bit, and web services type architecture. We can all thank Apple and the iPhone for that. The need for no longer being on my personal device, I want it in my enterprise at my core, and that's kind of what this model moves forward with. Now, I'm talking about moving through these building blocks, and we're talking mainly between access element, evolutionary server, and feature server. Now, as you're moving through the building blocks, Avaya wanted to make sure that this was kind of a seamless transition for you, or as easy as possible. So if you're looking at the screen right now, this is a typical signaling group for a SIP trunk. In order to go from feature server to evolutionary server, or evolutionary server to feature server, it can really be done in less than a minute. It's simply enabling or not enabling IMS, or IP multimedia subsystem. And that's the difference between the two things. Now, obviously, this is a licensing thing. So the ability to change back and forth between these two, evolutionary server and feature server, is very simple, and it happens in the signaling group programming. This is a good tree here to kind of walk you through making the decision on access element, evolutionary server, feature server. If you notice, the yes and no's. If you're talking about session manager and communication manager, no, you don't want that. Well, then you're kind of at the end there. But yes, do you want all SIP solution? Notice if it's yes, do you have existing AES applications? And again, if you're not familiar with the AES, if you don't have an existing AES, or you're not familiar with the Avaya AES, maybe you have a Cisco platform today or a Nortel platform, think about the AAS as the application piece that enables, like I said before, things like call recording, right, and CTI type functionality within different platforms. So, you know, do you have existing AAS today? Yes or no? If you do, yes. Well, then you're probably best suited to move into the evolutionary server. You know, and then obviously, if it's no, well, then we're going to ask one more quantifying question: sequencing of applications. Do you require, do you not? If it's yes, we're going to move into the feature server. If it's no, you're going into the evolutionary server bracket. And like I said, when you decide to make the change between evolution or feature, or you want to go feature back to evolution, it's just a simple programming change on the signaling group within within your trunking signaling group. If you notice here the compatibility matrix, so when you know, when the whole Aura platform first came out, you're looking at 1.1. This was really that first release, kind of here it is in the market. Let's see what it has to do. There's a lot of limitations to it. Not a lot of customers got on board with it at that point. Everybody wanted to see this product mature in the marketplace first. Notice there were some compatibility issues with it going forward. And as we go through the differences here, by the time we're at 6.0, the current release, you know, notice all the platforms are compatible, even moving into the Nortel piece here too, the CS1000s. So we talked about session manager, the system manager, and the communication manager, you know, really as kind of the primary core devices. And a big topic that comes up with customers is, how do I make this survivable, or what are my redundancy options, or my reliability? You know, most of you probably have some type of redundant option today, or you know, high availability option, or something like that. Whether you're a buyer or not, you probably have some type of reliability option. For those of you that are used to the Avaya platform and things like enterprise survivable servers and local survivable processors, the survivable model for Aura is very similar. The first part we're going to talk about is a survivable core. And survivable core should be thought of like an ESS, right? In an ESS situation, your you know, your primary CM, you lose connectivity with your primary CM. All of your devices, your gateways, they fail over to a secondary CM that's really in your core. It could be an active-active environment, could not. And all of the failover happens within the core, not at the branch. And that's what the survivable core is. Some of the benefits to this is it provides a geo-redundant feature server. So if you're running a feature server model, geo-redundancy meaning, you know, it doesn't have to be in your data center, your primary data center. You can put it anywhere, and as long as it's, you know, connectivity back to your session and system manager, you have that type of geo-redundancy. And feature servers, you know, a lot of vendors have them, but this is the first enterprise feature server backup ever offered in the market. Notice both SIP and non-SIP endpoints are supported for this. Again, just kind of running through kind of the highlights here of how this survivable core works. If you're familiar with ESS, this is going to sound very similar, but basically, with Session Manager loses kind of, let's just call it a heartbeat check for now with the main communication manager in the core, which can either be a feature server or an evolutionary server. What would happen is your gateways would then register with your survivable core, and your survivable core is basically a secondary CM, right? And when when Session Manager can initialize registration again with the main CM, then the call traffic, if you want to call it that, begins with the main CM again. So you're going to fail over to your secondary, or what we're calling the survivable core, which is really another CM, and that's what Session Manager will communicate with. Now, in that case where your primary CM comes back, all of a sudden System Manager says, hey, I got a heartbeat back. Session Manager, open up a SIP session with my primary communication manager, and that's going to be your primary Session Manager for all the devices. Everything re-registers back, and it happens automatically. Also notice some of the limits here: 63 survivable cores, which would be the same limit as the ESS today. Talking more about the ESS, if you're used to it, some of the same capacities here. If you have 248 gateways, you're looking at capacities of 250. You know, and all the endpoints and the trunks for 323 and SIP are all the same as well as the ESS today, and you guys can kind of see those totals on the screen. Talking a little bit more on the failover failback, as I mentioned, but during the failover, the session manager will send the SIP messages to the Survivable Core. So remember, the session manager being the traffic cop, it's going to start sending that traffic to the Survivable Core, which is really a secondary CM. And when connectivity to the main CM is restored, these gateways re-register with the main CM, and session manager initiates SIP messaging with the primary CM instead of the Survivable Core, bringing you back to primary full functionality with your primary core, session manager, system manager, and communication manager. And the great thing is it happens automatically. There's no manual switchover taking place here for this. All the communication manager features that you have in your primary, you'll have all of them in your Survivable Core as well. I talked about if you're used to the local survival processor mode for failover, and if you're used to the Avaya side, that was really used heavily for the branch model. And basically, if you're not familiar with it, what it was is a way for if you have a site or multiple sites, they each have a local survival processor. So if they lose connectivity, let's just call if they lose the WAN between the branch and the core, they can now process everything locally and also utilize PSTN trunking if they needed to, if they have a complete network failure. So we'll get into this with the survival branch here. We'll talk about how a little bit how this fails over and the registrations that are going to take place here for this failover. It's important, though, to make sure that we understand how the Aura endpoints and kind of the SIP phones in general work in terms of registration. So if we're talking about a 323 phone, typically, or pretty much all the time, you're registering to a CLAN, a processor, a certain media server, a certain gateway, and you're only having one registration. So what happens if you have a failure? Now my phone has to re-register with a secondary one based on my failover path, or sometimes network mapping, things like that can be done to make that a little easier, but you're still dealing with a situation of a single registration. Moving to the SIP phone and the SIP devices, you can have up to 3 registrations with 3 different session managers. So my phone here may have a registration number 1 as its primary session manager, but if I can't talk to my primary session manager, what's my second path to complete this call? It's automatically trying the second path. And for the branch solution, your second registration would be your local branch session manager and communication manager for that registration. So to your actual customer, to your end user, the failover here is seamless. I could be making a call, or I could be talking to somebody in this phone. I could lose my WAN connectivity to my primary session manager, and my call stays active because I have already registration running with my branch location, and maybe I even have a third one. So maybe this would be a primary session manager, maybe I have a second instance of session manager in a different global location that I want to use as my second, and then maybe I want to fail over to my branch. So you can build out the failover path here, you know, as complex or as easy as you want, but keep in mind you have these 3 registrations open to you, and the failover becomes almost like a seamless event. This kind of gives you a failover scenario here. The survival remote sites include local branch session manager and local instance of CM. So in this scenario, if I was to fail over my WAN, right, if my WAN was to fail, I lose connectivity to my WAN. At my branch, I have a session manager and a communication manager to handle things locally. going back to what I was saying before, the whole triple registration of my session or of my device, having the ability for, if my primary session manager fails, the phone marks session manager 2 as the active controller and completes the session. See, the phone actually never goes down in this scenario. If you notice here, the phone 1 is still served by the communication manager. Let's talk about if the branch loses the WAN connectivity. And what we're talking about here is if phone 1 cannot connect with session manager 1 or session manager 2. Of course, unless session manager 2 is your branch session manager, that's a different scenario. We're talking about the geo-redundant solution here where session manager 1 and session manager 2 is both WAN connectivity. You know, the media gateway can't connect with CM or the session controller, and it marks the LSP as a controller. So referring back to the local survivable processor mode, you have your branch processor to handle this, and the SIP endpoints are served by that branch session manager, and non-SIP endpoints are served by the media gateway. So if you had non-SIP endpoints in this scenario, you would obviously have SIP trunking and non-SIP trunking in this gateway to support both sets of devices. And this is just a review of a failover type architecture, and this redundancy review here really looks at complete survivable core and branch failover type of scenario. So if you notice, you're running duplicated feature servers and evolutionary servers, duplicated feature servers and survivable core evolutionary servers, multiple geo-redundant survivable cores, multiple geo-redundant session managers. So if I'm running through this and you're thinking back to what we were talking about before, the geo-redundancy piece, having the ability to have up to 6 session manager instances, well, you could have one in New York, one in Green Bay, one in California, one in Spain, one in China. As long as you have WAN connectivity, you can be completely geo-redundant because my SIP endpoint can register to up to 3 of them at one time. Redundant connections to the phones and branches, multiple geo-redundant media servers and gateways. Again, just because I have a gateway that registers a session manager 1 at one location, my gateway at another location can register to session manager 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever session manager I want. Geo-redundant PSTN connections. So let's say you lose your complete network, you're down completely, SIP's gone. Then we bring in PSTN connections to the same gateway to complete branch survivability. So that's a complete survivable type of model there, right? Pretty robust in this architectural diagram, and for some of you it may be too robust. There's different levels of how you can architect the redundancy model here. Maybe for some of you the core is more important than the branch. Maybe for some of you the branch is more important than the core. That would be something we would look at, talking more through your exact environment architecture. There are other choices than the standard Avaya models there, than the survivable core and the branch survivability model. Some of you today may have a secure router, right, or the advanced gateway model from Avaya. Some of you may be taking advantage of some of the Juniper and Cisco branch type gateway models that are out there today, utilizing layer 2 and layer 3 switching at your local site. Those are supported. Now, I would say you would want to check, if you're doing that today at a location, you'd want to check with compatibility, especially talking about registering back to the system manager, the session manager, and the communication manager. As long as it's SIP, it shouldn't be a problem, but I would always check on compatibility of that. But there are other options, and if you're doing something today, there's a good chance you may be able to take advantage of it and keep that survivability model in the future. This takes you through some of the other branch type models like the SR2330, the 4134, and the Advanced Gateway 2330. So these are some of those models that I was showing on the last screen that are different from branch and survivable core. And if you can take a look here on a normal day, you can do up to the SIP entity is actually the SIP gateway. And why it says other in quotes is as you're setting this up within your system manager, you have to build out a SIP entity, right? We talked about making sure system manager knows all the devices on your network. Well, in this case, this would be considered an other device within your system manager when you're setting up a SIP entity. SIP phones do register with the dual session manager core, and the gateway is in normal mode. So we talked about in a situation where we lose that type of connectivity, that survivable gateway goes into backup mode. The survivable SIP registrar becomes a feature server, right? And it can support up to 100 users. So again, if you have a branch location with 1,000 users, this isn't going to be the model you're going with here. You're talking about 100 or less users for this type of failover model. And if you have an even smaller location, so let's say maybe you have a location with 5 or 10 users, maybe it's a small branch, which is typical, especially if you're in a bank scenario where you may have banks all over the country. Some of them may only have 5 or 10 or even 20 employees. You know, there's less costly solutions out there like the AudioCodes branch survivability model. You do have limited features. You can complete calls, you have hold, you have transfer, and you have conference, but you don't have your full application suite like you do in the full failover model with the Avaya solution. But this model is out there. Maybe some of you are using it today. It is supported going forward. We talked about session manager, we've talked about the system manager, and we've talked about the communication manager. And if you remember at the beginning, kind of the intro section, I mentioned the system platform as being another piece of the core architecture here to Aura. And it's actually very important. If you've heard any type of presentation on Aura or Aura Contact Center, you know, we're always talking about these virtualized environments and going forward, this is going to be virtualized or that's going to be virtualized. Well, something still has to manage those virtualized environments. Something almost has to act as the host, right? And the way we accommodate this in the Aura architecture is with system platform. So going forward in the 6.0 model, the Avaya software applications actually become these virtualized templates, right? And these virtualized templates are built on top of system platform. It allows you to do things like manage your installations, right? So maybe you're installing Communication Manager 6.0 with some UC type applications with it as well. Well, the first thing you're going to do is install your system platform. So then you can go ahead and start building out your virtual templates of Communication Manager, of your UC applications. It gives you this management tool for virtual environments. You can see here it allows you to do things like backups and restores of your virtual environments. Also today, some of you may be using a tool called Integrated Management or the Web Manager tool from Avaya that allows you to do things like security patches or firmware upgrades, things like that. Now you're going to do those from your system platform, because system platform is what your CM template is built on, or your gateway template is built on. Think of it as kind of the backbone to all of your environments that are running right now. If you do notice, though, the Communication Manager command line is still available. If you're used to using that to do patches and upgrades and things like that, which a lot of people are within the Avaya space, you can still do that, but you also have a much easier way utilizing the system platform. System platform supports the going forward secure access link. Most of you, if you're an Avaya customer, you might be familiar with this. It's no longer modem for support. Avaya utilizes the secure access link to gain remote access to your network and to your Avaya systems to provide support for those. You still get the alarming through the SAL. So today, you know, some of you may be getting alarming notifications from Avaya. Those are generated through your SAL to Avaya, and Avaya sends you the alarm notifications. And that kind of takes us into the UC portion of what we're going to start talking about. But before I get into that, I just want to do a quick recap. Session Manager, think of it as your traffic cop of your environment. It's all that it's doing is initiating and ending communication between applications and devices. System Manager is exactly that. It's managing your system. It's managing those devices that Session Manager is initiating that communication with. It's managing those applications. If you're going to do routing, right, routing anything, email packets, instant message packets, phone packets, any type of packet routing that you're doing with Session Manager, System Manager has to know it's that device. And it doesn't have to be an Avaya device. It can be any SIP device. You just have to make sure System Manager knows about it. Communication Manager 6.0, again, it's moving into the full Aura architecture. You're talking about evolutionary server or feature server, right? Prior to that, 5.2.1 is an access element option, as well as 6.0 gets you into our virtualized template platform, starting to take advantage of the virtualized environments and possible full SIP capabilities within your network. And then of course, those virtualized templates bring us into the system platform piece, which, like I was saying before, is kind of the backbone or the host to all of these new virtualized templates going forward with Avaya Aura. So that's a little recap. We will have a question session here in a little bit. If you guys do have questions, certainly I'd like to try to answer them for you and going forward. So what you're looking at now is the Avaya Aura presence services. So big market push. Everybody wants presence, whether it's Microsoft, whether it's Cisco, whether it's Avaya. You know, pretty much there's so many vendors out here, so many options for presence. Everybody wants it. What Avaya did is it said, okay, the market wants it. Let's just make it an entitlement. It's included in the Avaya Aura package. So if you purchase Avaya Aura, you know, for the enterprise model 6.0, you're going to receive the presence services as part of that. And some of the biggest benefits here is a native instant messaging, as well as the integration to not just Avaya UC applications. So when I talk about that, if you're familiar with more traditional the Avaya IP softphone or the One-X platform for things like One-X Communicator or One-X Portal, right, or One-X Mobile, the presence services for the Avaya Aura 6.0 integrate to all of those UC applications. So now your presence is part of the actual real estate on the client. Also, you should keep in mind that one of the biggest benefits for this presence service is the fact that it's open standards, right? Going back to that services-oriented architecture, web service-based type architecture, and open standards, which is what the market pushed for. You know, being able to integrate presence with Microsoft, IBM, and Google, as well as Exchange, Domino, and Polycom, all of these ones that say future here, that capability exists today. This slide deck was given a little bit before when 6.0 was kind of first releasing. So that functionality does exist today for presence. So that open standards push, Avaya has accepted it. Avaya is integrating it into its architecture, and one of the biggest things here is presence. And it doesn't really matter what the end client is. You could be running any end client and utilizing presence in your core, right? Pushing all of this type of functionality from your core instead of the edge device lowers your total cost of ownership as well as your hardware footprint. So you look at some of the other benefits here. You know, things like instant messaging and being able to use, you know, integrate with your calendars, things like that. I already mentioned vendor-independent application. You can custom develop to this presence, right? So Avaya does open the API here for custom development. If you have a team of application developers that's pretty savvy, they can get into that as well with this presence. This kind of gives you an idea of some of the presence features and functionality and what it looks like on the Avaya One-X client. So this is kind of a screenshot of the Avaya One-X communicator client. I'll talk a little bit about that client here in a minute. But if you notice, the client does have things like soft phone capabilities, browser capabilities, instant messaging, texting, all those. It's a fully integrated client with your UC model. But we're talking about presence here, and you can see the different types of presence that we have. There's system messaging, the basic presence, which is status. I think everybody can kind of have that functionality today with different devices in terms of are you there or you're not there. But obviously system messaging, things like I'm in a meeting or I'm hosting a conference. Hey, maybe you want to put on there I'm hosting a conference in conference room. Maybe somebody's late for the conference meeting and they want to meet you in the conference room. You can put it on there for your presence. Talk about mode here. One of the biggest things here is having a single point of contact for your customers or your end users, and then being able to decipher what mode or what profile you're in depending on time of day or depending on your calendar, things like that. Again, remember this integrates to things like your calendar. So mode, office, home, mobile, traveling. One-X gives you the flexibility to have that one phone number touch with your customer and end users, and then decide, within the client what mode you're going to be in. So maybe it already knows that, hey, at 5 o'clock I'm in my home mode. Well, what does that mean? Maybe that means I need to forward maybe that means One-X is forwarding all my calls to my cell phone. Maybe that's what it is. Or I'm in the office mode. So what does that mean? Maybe they get my office greeting. Maybe they get my office voicemail, right? So different voice messaging too. And then mobile and traveling, you can set those modes up for however you like, but you get that single profile touch with all of your customers and end users. Some of the differentiators here for the Avaya presence piece, some of them I touched on already, but the integration to multi-vendors here, it's completely open standards pretty much. We provide the SDK, you can get the API, you can custom develop into it. You also can use TLS for security, and it's not dependent on any one device or product. So if you're used to the Microsoft Link or the Microsoft OCS, where you could have it completely closed out on your desktop, but you're still getting updates from it, it's the same type of functionality. It's always on. And that wraps up the Avaya One-X presence piece. And what I'm going to do now is open up some of the UC application options that ride within this architecture as well. I mentioned one of them already, the One-X communicator. And what I'm going to do is take you through some of the other ones. So this is a standard brochure here from Avaya, and we're going to start talking about the different pieces within this brochure. And then we'll open up this session for questions, and I think there's some quiz questions as well with some giveaways, and then we'll break into the contact center. But so unified communications, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, unified communications was really kind of dependent on the application or the device. It wasn't looking at the big picture of your environment, right? And unified communications today, or the market demand, is really talking about, I want UC coverage across my entire network, or I want to be mobile. I want to have 6 profiles. It's taking it to a level where the vendors had to open up to a point where they were not dependent on themselves. It had to be dependent on every other device that was in the market. So the UC bundle from Avaya, you're really talking about seamless integration, which we talked about, being able to integrate with your email, your voicemail, instant messaging, conference calling, video teleconferencing if that's what you want to use, all of that type of multimedia, social media type of functionality that you may be using on your personal device today, you're now able to take advantage from your enterprise core and extend out to your end users. And obviously that type of efficiency on your end user directly spins down to if you're servicing clients, and the customer experience is much better for that. So some of the components here that we're talking about, we talked about One-X communicator, but we'll talk about it again here. It's really, if you're used to an IP soft phone, it's really that approach, but then add in things like email, instant messaging, text messaging, video teleconferencing, browser, all that type of function, all that multimedia functionality that I talked about before, all on a single user client. So you want to talk about efficiency, being able to handle your entire business environment or your business communications on one single client. for the end user, makes them extremely efficient. And that's what the One-X communicator does. It takes the soft phone and pulls in the rest of your business communications. Also, obviously intelligent presence is available with that as well. Going into another product here, the One-X portal, you're talking about being able to utilize the Avaya Aura Communication Manager, but it's browser-based, right? So it's browser-based telephony. And you can access all of your enterprise telephony, Avaya Aura Communication Manager, voice messaging, modular messaging, meeting exchange, all of these type of core applications you can access through the One-X portal, and it's all browser-based. It also offers presence services and aggregated communication channels for presence regarding telephony and instant messaging. So One-X portal is really kind of a product where it's a portal into your enterprise telephony versus pushing that functionality out to a client like One-X Communicator. We touched on Avaya Aura Presence. I'm not going to get too much into that. We looked at it earlier, and its presence and its open standards. Avaya Aura Application Enablement Services. Now, the AES is something that's existed within Avaya for a long time. And I mentioned earlier a common example for an AES, and if you're using another platform, it's just the piece that provides the integration for things like call recording. The AES going forward, though, for Avaya Aura is really an AES that involves all types of third-party integration. And an example here is the Microsoft Office Communicator Server integration. So the One-X client or the One-X with the Avaya Aura AES services actually has this native Microsoft Office Communication Server integration already built into it, and you can take advantage of things on the Microsoft client like click to call, click to conference, click to IM. So maybe you have a Microsoft environment today, and you like that UC client that it's offering. Well, then take advantage of that UC client. If you purchased it, if you have that investment, use it and take advantage of that functionality. But now you can take advantage of it through your core telephony, and that's the bigger difference. Again, reducing hardware footprints, lowering total cost of ownership going forward for UC in your environment. You also see it spreading across things like IBM and Lotus, same time type of integration as well. There are some same time customers out there. You might be one of them, and you do have that type of native integration with that as well. One-X Mobile brings you into the piece that we're talking about when you're thinking of your iPhone, your BlackBerry. Maybe you're running a Droid, things like that. Being able to have a mobile app that connects you to all of your corporate enterprise UC applications. That's what One-X Mobile does. It runs on your mobile device, and it brings things into your mobile device like all of your corporate calls, all of your email. You can use dialing through the communication manager. So if you're using your One-X Mobile application, you're launching a phone call. That phone call can actually initiate through the communication manager. Remember, going back to that single profile for your customers don't need to know that you're on the golf course. Your customers or your end user only sees your business profile if it's configured that way for that mode. So that's you're initiating things through your core telephony, which is where you're making your investment, and the end device or the end application. Open standards doesn't matter. Extension to cellular. Extension to cellular is a feature that's existed for a long time. It's not really a One-X type of feature. It's more of a communication manager feature, but it can extend your desk phone to your cell phone. It does give you line of sight to your desk phone for incoming calls and things like that. But you don't have that that single profile for multi-purpose type of approach. It basically is an extension of your desk phone to your cellular phone. But there's no profile setup. You're not building out office profiles so that your customer, when they call you, maybe you're at home, but they're still receiving your office greeting and your office voice, things like that. You don't get that. It's just pushing the call to a cellular or utilizing cellular dialing across your communication manager. And this product suite goes on here more and more. You're looking at a speech application that utilizes speech recognition. You'll find this type of product sitting on things like modular messaging, so voicemail applications utilizing speech, One-X agent. And we're going to talk about this One-X agent piece in the contact center portion. This was really the agent desktop, and a lot of people said, well, that's not UC, that's contact center. Well, the fact is that the market demand is really blending contact center and UC anyway. UC functionality is starting to exist in the contact center, and the demand is there for it. And we'll talk about what this client is now going forward. I mentioned video teleconferencing utilizing the One-X platform. You do have the option for things like desktop video utilizing One-X communicator client, and then there's a whole series of One-X desk phones that you have your LED screen, and you can take advantage of these applications and clients on that screen as well. And then a pretty popular one right now is the One-X Attendant, software-based attendant. So today, if you're using a hardware-based attendant console, number one, they tend to be hard to support now. A lot of them are becoming legacy, and the replacement really is a software version of that, and that would be the One-X Attendant. So the interesting thing about this is when you're looking at UC in an Avaya Aura, when we talk about 6.0, right? 6.0 includes the UC all-inclusive offer. And so you get many of these UC applications with right-to-use licensing. That's an entitlement to you on the 6.0 platform. The other portion of this that I haven't touched on is running all this from one server. I've talked a lot about reducing hardware footprint, but we haven't really talked about servers. And right now, talking about the system manager, session manager, communication manager, and things like that, as well as these UC bundles, you would be talking about 2 servers. Okay, so 2 servers in your environment to support the entire Avaya Aura Core with all of the UC components you see here. That would be your hardware footprint so far. Now, obviously, that's not taking into account your reliability or your redundancy. That'll be options for you to explore as you dive deeper into your architecture, but that would be our hardware footprint today. So that wraps up our section here where we talk about the Avaya Aura Core as well as the kind of the UC pieces of the pie. I think we do have some giveaways here for some quiz questions. So I'm going to ask some questions if you guys don't mind answering them. We have quite a few attendees, so if you don't mind answering the question within the chat section, and I'll kind of take the first responder, and Diana will connect with you on some of the giveaways here. So just to kind of keep it interesting, little quiz question: how many instances of Session Manager does Release 6.0 support? All right, and so the answer for that would be 6. 6 instances of Session Manager is supported with Release 6.0. Another question here in terms of survivability: if my primary Session Manager loses connectivity with my primary core communication manager, what survivability option do I have in my core for my Session Manager to register and complete SIP communication with the communication manager? What's the name for that type of survivability? All right, and the answer for that would be the survivable core. So anytime you're talking about failover or survivability in your core, referring to Aura 6.0, that would be a survivable core, and that's basically where your primary session manager initiates SIP registration with a second CM in your core to reestablish core CM functionality. What piece of our core Avaya Aura architecture is the backbone or host to the virtualized templates going forward for things like Communication Manager and System Manager? What is that backbone called within the Aura core? And the answer for that would be System Platform. So, okay, I am getting a couple questions here into the chat room, and I'll kind of run through them real quick before we get into Contact Center. Can you tell me the difference between the Session Manager and the SIP Enablement Server? Sure. So, if you think about the Session Manager as the next SIP Enablement Server, right? So SIP Enablement Server was Avaya's way to integrate SIP into your network. But all it was is an integration piece to initiate SIP, right? It can't control your entire business communications network. So the SIP Enablement Server is a great integration piece. Almost think of it as a SIP connector between Communication Manager and maybe some Microsoft, some limited functionality there between the two platforms. I mean, I know they integrate. We do OCS integrations all the time, the SIP or link integrations, but the SIP enablement piece doesn't have the intelligence or the capability to manage your entire business communications network. The Session Manager takes that to the next level by initiating, number one, the System Manager, right? So the System Manager is where you can register all of the devices on your communications network. It doesn't matter if it's an Avaya device. It doesn't matter if it's a Microsoft device. It doesn't matter if it's a customer CRM platform. If it's a SIP platform, System Manager can manage it. So number one, you get the management of your entire communications platform through System Manager. And then also the Session Manager, when you talk about initiating this type of traffic cop environment, the Session Manager, through some of the routing policies, through the locations, through the SIP entities, you're able to define and manipulate traffic like never before with the SIP Enablement Server. So before in like the SIP Enablement Server, you could utilize kind of your host network map to say, well, this came from this host and it's going to this host. So you could do some custom routing utilizing that. But things like manipulation of routing policies or locations and completely changing out the SIP URI just weren't possible or very difficult. So the actual flexibility to have a completely wide open traffic cop, if you will, the Session Manager is really the big difference. So the two big differences are the management of your entire communications network via SIP through the System Manager, and then also the flexible interoperability and integration of SIP traffic and routing through the Session Manager. So those are the two main big differences. Yes, there's a lot of similarity because, like I said, the SIP Enablement Server is the next piece. You know, the Session Manager is the next piece to the SIP Enablement Server, and certainly the piece of your SIP trunking and things like that are very much the same. I also have another question here. For One-X Mobile, can you have users in remote sites use a local number to connect to Communication Manager? All remote sites have a media gateway with their own PRI and local DIDs. So for this, I'm understanding. I want to make sure I'm understanding. You have a remote site. You have users that are utilizing One-X Mobile at that remote site. They have their own PRIs and local DIDs. So for this, utilizing the local number, then you want to do this within the Avaya Aura architecture. That's actually not a problem. And the reason I say that is going back to the network routing and some of the dial plan interoperability that you have. You can use that local number at the site, and if you had to manipulate it in your core in terms of being able to process or connect to the CM or actually use CM functionality in your core but also utilize One-X Mobile and local numbers at the site, you could utilize your session manager to accommodate that, and actually you can customize that traffic through your core to create that environment with your communication manager. So yes, you can do that, but it does take some manipulation of your dial plan at the core level within your session manager to make that happen. And there's another question here. It's regarding One-X. We've used the Road Warrior feature with IP softphone for our users that travel overseas. It would be able to make phone calls from their laptops using a USB microphone and an Ethernet connection. IP softphone is not compatible with Windows 7. What One-X product gives us this functionality? Yeah, so for this functionality, I would recommend the One-X communicator, which is kind of the next level to the IP softphone. And not only would they gain that type of functionality for the Windows 7 environment, they would also then, with the One-X communicator, have the ability to use that single client for not just the phone, but again, they can do their email. If you guys are utilizing instant messaging, they can integrate instant messaging with it. They can browse the internet from that. So that is all functionality that definitely built into One-X communicator, and that would be your next step, upgrading from IP softphone to accommodate that. So I'm going to get into, and I appreciate everybody's questions, but just to respect the time here, I've got a lot of data to get through on the contact center piece, and I know we do have some very interested contact center participants. If there's a question I didn't get to, or you'd like further investigation into it, or you have more questions around it, I'll put my email out here, and you guys can email me directly, and I'll get back to you, or we can hook up on a conference call. I certainly would want to work back and forth with you on any questions, but I know we have technically 45 minutes here, and I've got quite a bit of contact center stuff to cover here. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up with the Avaya Aura Contact Center piece here, the 6.0 Avaya Aura Contact Center. And there we go. Okay, sorry about that. Some more technical difficulties. So the Avaya Aura Contact Center, if you've been talking with Avaya for the last couple of years, or a business partner, or maybe you're on the Nortel side and you're familiar with the next generation contact center, this is really a piece where Avaya gained a ton of functionality from the acquisition of Nortel. So prior to that acquisition, or really even during that acquisition, there wouldn't have been much of a debate in the market space. Every vendor is going to put up a debate, but really there wouldn't have been much of a debate by saying Avaya had the best voice processing and routing intelligence for the contact center, and next generation contact center, which was really a Nortel product, has the best multimedia solution in the contact center space. And it all has to do around customer experience and web services and services-oriented architecture to handle your customer contact. And that's what AACC is, right? It's taking the high-powered functionality of Avaya Aura Call Center, not Avaya Aura, Avaya Call Center Elite, right, which was the voice processing piece of Avaya, and the next generation multimedia functionality, and blending them together for a unified agent desktop. And what that's going to create is this context-sensitive inbound-outbound voice multimedia solution. Context-sensitive, not contact, but context. So meaning, let's say I did have an inbound voice call from a customer, and I'm using Aura Contact Center, and Aura Contact Center recognizes that it's had an instant message session with this person, it's had an email session with this person. Well, it's notifying the agent of all of that past history real time with this customer, and initiating responses to this customer based on the context of all of its engagements with them. So context is different from contact, and it's important that we understand those different pieces. So some of the how does it work type stuff, the skills-based routing for multiple media types. Okay, we can do that today, but not with all within one product. The customer context preservation throughout the interaction. So like I was saying before, the history of the contact or the history of that current conversation, being able to recognize when it needs to pull historical data and create auto responses or bring data to the agent so that it can properly answer that question. That's context-based type handling. Drag and drop service creation environment. Yeah, if you're used to the Nortel scripting in the contact center space, you're really going to like this. That kind of takes the same scripting approach and then includes some drag and drop functionality and some already built workflows and things like that. Single administration and unified reporting engine. No longer do you have this is the server where I log into to administer my agent. So this is the server that I go to run my voice reporting. This is the server that I go to run my multimedia reporting. It's all built into one reporting engine. The unified agent desktop. Agent being able to handle all types of contact with your customer on one single desktop. Driving up the efficiency of the agent is certainly going to drive up the experience for your customer. And then also the Aura Contact Center pulls in outbound dialing as well. So I've talked about a lot of that functionality there right at the beginning, and it's important to understand the components of Aura Contact Center and what they actually do, right? Because we're talking about some new technology and how we handle contact center contacts and how we handle our customer experience. But what we haven't gotten into is what pieces of this whole thing do what. And you can see here the software components of the Aura Contact Center. Your multimedia server and databases called your CCMM. If you're familiar with the Nortel environment, maybe you're a Nortel customer already, these are going to look very, very familiar to you. The media application server, that's existed for years across different platforms. They just pulled it into the contact center piece here. Context and control, business application integration, CCT. So today, if you're using any type of traditional CTI integration, maybe it's an AES, maybe it's a Cisco platform CTI type solution, CCT is the piece here that is going to start controlling the CTI functionality. Centralized management and administration. That's another piece of our software here, and we'll get into what that is further in the thing. And then the multimedia skills-based workflow engine, the CCMS. Again, talking about we're pulling in the multimedia functionality and the workflow capabilities of next generation contact center and bringing them into the voice piece of Avaya and making this one software contact center. Some of the biggest things here, I mean, some of the highlights of this, right? I mean, kind of the biggest, Avaya Aura Contact Center, the whole entire thing, this entire DVD installs in 35 minutes. Yeah, most of you have heard that. If you've heard that from any other vendor, you know that the application does install in 35 minutes, but keep in mind you still have to actually configure and program the application to work how you want. It just doesn't come out of the box ready for your environment. So I want to make sure I point that out. It's kind of a funny note. Yeah, it installs in 35 minutes, so you do gain some speed there in terms of hours of installing software. So there's still some programming. And then also notice the VMware here, virtualized environments going forward for Avaya. So looking at deployment options today, and some of you may have this and some of you may be going forward looking at this. For those of you that are existing Avaya, really where we're sitting today is up to 1,000 agents on a VMware supported installation. On the Nortel side, you're getting a lot larger numbers because obviously this product derives from the Nortel side, so the integration there is much easier. You can go up to 5,000, right? 5,000 agents, and typically up to 3,000 VMware supported agents for this platform. So you also on the Nortel side have the SIP and the AML, and we'll get into some of that. You guys may have heard that on the Nortel side before. So this is we're looking at a mid-sized template, and again, this is a template. Everybody's environment is different. Everybody's environment is unique to how you handle your customer contact. So I don't want you to look at this and say, that doesn't fit into my environment, because obviously everybody's environment is different. But this kind of gives you an idea. Notice an AES of 5.2.1, an SES of 5.2.1, and then the Communication Manager 5.2.1. So there's your core environment. Typically in the mid-size template, and notice you can utilize a SIP trunking there to your contact center piece, and you're going to get the blended contact center, email, fax, web chat, SMS, white mail, outbound, and also handle your voice side as well. Typically in this model, the telephones are not SIP. Typically in this model, they're TDM and 323 for the mid-size template. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this mid-size template, but just understand if you do fall under some of the mid-size type contact center, that this model is fully supported for the mid-size contact center. I've talked a lot about the Nortel piece, and it's very important because a lot of this new technology, new functionality actually came from the Nortel side. And this is just another template that kind of shows a basic architectural diagram here of what a CS1000 type of deployment may look like with the contact center. And notice right here, your CS1000, notice its versions 5.0 to 7.0. So if you're Nortel today, and if you're a Meridian customer, maybe you have some other type of legacy Nortel, and you're looking at what your upgrade path is, it's important to look at, you do have options to upgrade within the Nortel platform that are fully supported for Avaya Aura, taking advantage of Session Manager, System Manager, as well as taking advantage of the Aura Contact Center. So, you know, it's important to look at your roadmap and what's best for you. If staying on Nortel is best for you, well then get current to the CS1000 platform so you can start taking advantage of all this new technology. If you're looking at going 100% Avaya, well then you also have that option as well. And again, you have building block approaches to all of that, which we already covered. AML is something that it is supported. It's been supported. In fact, it was kind of the original supported functionality for the next generation contact center with some of the legacy Nortel platforms. And notice the AML supports connectivity to the Meridian platform. So if you are looking to take advantage of your Meridian platform, maybe you're not at the point where you can upgrade your core, but you do have some funds to upgrade your contact center, an AML deployment may be best for you. So looking at kind of the product roadmap here, July 2010, obviously we've come and gone from that. Like I was saying before, we're sitting at this period of 6.0 to 6.1. I would tell you in May 2011 is when 6.1 is supposed to release. And you can see here it's supposed to support up to 5,000 active agents. So we're just a few weeks away from upping the capacity here for agents on the Avaya side. And then from May, you're looking 12 to 24 months of being able to support 10,000 or more active agents. These numbers can go up and down. Product roadmaps change frequently, as you guys might know, so I would just keep checking with your business partner or your Avaya rep on what those capacities are. But this is the projected current to 24 months down the road type product roadmap for Aura Contact Center. So I talked about getting into each component here, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to start with the Contact Center Manager server, and again, if you're Nortel, you're probably pretty familiar with this, but we'll get into it. It's responsible for the skills-based routing and call handling, right? So if you're used to, on the Avaya side, if you're used to the skills-based routing being handled through like your vectoring and VDNs and setting up your skill groups within your CM, well, all of that is now the responsibility of the CCMS, right? And it also sets up and manages the persistent conference. That's very important, right? This persistent conference type wording that we're seeing being thrown out in the Avaya space is a little different than what we're used to. In fact, it's Avaya saying persistent conference really is kind of the next CTI. Avaya is trying to create that single segment call flow of bringing in the services and the applications to your customer instead of a traditional CTI where you're routing call control and the customer through various applications and eventually to the agent. And we'll talk more about that, but understand persistent conference really is setting up conferences with applications so that they can be brought to your customer versus routing your customer to them, eliminating some of that traditional CTI multi-segment call flow. Also notice on here, out of the box, on board, reporting and web-based management and administration. So again, single site for administration, single site for reporting drives efficiency in the contact center. Some of the other components here, some of these get into a little bit, I don't know how technical the audience is, but some of this gets into, you know, an inter-systems cache database, some of the Java-based data access to the database. Again, it queues, it routes the calls, has the connectors for accessing communication platforms. So in your queuing and your routing, your workflow may call on another database or may call on another application to be brought into the conversation. CCMS has those, manages those connectors for accessing those platforms. And again, I referenced the reporting and analytics out of the box within the CCMS. And then also we were talking just briefly about some of that real-time connectivity with other databases or with other applications. Notice here the Apache web server, web-based, right? Web services, that's the market demand for real-time data to your agent. The CCMS, you know, it also has the functionality of kind of like your license manager. It controls your licensing and access to the contact center functionality. So whatever the functionality is you purchase for your contact center, understand that licensing is controlled within your CCMS. So just an example of skills and agent properties. You know, the big difference between the new way skills are assigned, which is skills are assigned to agents versus agents being assigned to an ACD, to queues, to groups. Hunt groups, if you're familiar with hunt groups are the skills on the Avaya side, and some of the capacity here is pretty nice, up to 150 active skills, and incoming contacts and queue, and up to 20 skill sets with 6 levels of priority. So if you guys today do any type of priority-based queuing or you know, multiple priority skill sets for agents, kind of like business advocate, where you have your primary skill, second and third, and they have threshold limits set on all of them, and business advocate kind of manages that piece for you. Think of CCMS doing that today with the same type of functionality, and it's actually not a separate purchased functionality, which Avaya used to be. That type of business advocate functionality is out of the box with the AACC. So just a nice little diagram of queuing calls. Obviously, you see a Premier season ticket holder and a one-time ticket holder, and AACC based on the context of the customer. You know, obviously your Premier box season ticket holder, you're going to want to, you know, queue them to a priority 1 type of customer service agent, and a one-time ticket buyer may go to a priority 3. So what does this do? You're talking about customer experience, right? Your Premier season ticket holder, they get down to, let's say, a priority 3 customer service agent. That service agent may be new, could possibly be in training, right? May not have the history with the Premier season ticket holder, may not understand how to communicate with them. And so obviously your experience management there is crucial to making sure, obviously, your Premier season ticket holder is the one spending more of the money here, making sure their experience is, you know, in the line with what a Premier box season ticket holder would be versus a one-time ticket buyer. Obviously, you want to make sure they have a good experience, but you wouldn't want to bog down your priority 1 agent with a one-time ticket buyer when they're servicing Premier ticket buyers. Some of the interoperability and flexibility within databases is one of the key, functionalities of the Avaya Aura Architecture and Contact Center. And if you look here, out of the box, the database integration wizard, this allows you to do things like, SQL customer databases. Maybe you have a CRM database. Maybe you have a merchandise database. Maybe you have a ticket database. Maybe you have a delivery database. Whatever that database is, SQL, Java, Oracle, whatever your database is, there's a database wizard to build those connectors to it. So within the workflow, obviously you want to gather data about that person or about that functionality that's going on right now with the customer. And it's happening real time utilizing the database integration wizard. You kind of see the wizard on the bottom here of the screen. It has out-of-the-box database connectors. The service creation environment, again, is one of the pieces that just makes, on the IT side, the efficiency of managing this contact center and administration of the contact center very, very easy. Before, if you're used to the traditional Avaya programming of vectors, sometimes it's lengthy, sometimes it's complicated, and you didn't have a great way to test before either putting it into like a test lab, so then you were managing a lab environment, which created financial and process headaches a lot of times within different environments, or you didn't have a way to really understand how that program was going to impact your customer until it went live. So within the service creation environment, you have a graphical flow designer, and it has out-of-the-box call flows, right? And these are completely customizable as well, but there's standard inbound, outbound for voice, email, instant messaging, web chat, did I mention fax, social media, Twitter, Facebook. Maybe that's how you're connecting with your customers. The SCE provides out-of-the-box call flows for you to customize. So making the decisions of how to route it, what to put in the call flow, how to call the database, a lot of that functionality is already built in. You just have to customize it to your environment. And this is a good picture of it. If you're used to the Nortel side, you're probably used to something like this. The difference is a lot of the drag and drop capability, which you see on the left, being able to drag and drop flows and scripts into place. And then there's a couple pieces here. I just mentioned being able to understand how it's going to affect your customer or how that call flow is really going to route through your environment. So there's actually a customer demo selection here on the SCE tool. And so you can build your workflow and then go into a customer demo environment, and it actually runs your workflow as if you were the customer. And so you can experience the customer impact for yourself. Also notice synchronization and problem view. Right there you're going to know right away if there's errors within your workflow before they go to production. So the efficiency of administration and managing this versus traditional call center program is just is really, really fantastic for your environment. And then one of the biggest features here of the SCE, besides some of the scripting benefits, is the documentation wizard. So very often it's hard to find complete call center documentation for your environment or for a customer's environment if you're a business partner. SCE generates these PDFs or HTML format documentation of your call flows, of your skill sets, of your agents automatically as you build it out. So no longer are you digging through emails from 6 years ago of you with another colleague where you guys set up a couple vectors and now all of a sudden they're coming relevant again and you can't remember what you did with those vectors or what they were supposed to do. Generate the actual documentation real time as you're doing the programming, and then just go ahead and save the PDF. On the Nortel side, you do have the ability of networking your Nortel skill sets and your Nortel distributed nodes and things like that. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time in this. If you are a Nortel existing customer, there is a lot of options here for you based on the fact that this came from the Nortel. But keep in mind, you still have a lot of the Aura Contact Center functionality that I'm talking about. Then you actually have a little more of the network networking of nodes and things like that. And what that's referring to, if you're on the Nortel side or you're not, you can network multiple contact center nodes utilizing your traditional NES MCD networking. So some of that functionality exists today. It's supported going into Aura Contact Center, and in the Nortel environment can utilize all the functionality and keep its networking capability that it had before. Moving forward with the core components, the centralized management and administration server. This is really a one-stop shop web-based administration, management, and reporting tool package that comes out of the box with the Avaya Aura Contact Center. So today, again, if you're doing voice reporting and administration of your contact center, and maybe you're doing multimedia reporting, those are probably on different platforms or a very complex combined platform. This is all out of the box, very easy to use. You can get the real-time reporting, wall boards, and displays for supervisors and agents. You also have access to the historical reporting and the access. Remember the access to the creation environment for the one administration for all management. So create your workflows in SCE through the CCMA, and that way you're managing your entire contact center from one location. This is just a one central management application. You can see some of the options here when you log in. You have your contact center management, access and partition management, real-time reporting, historical reporting, call reporting, and quality monitoring. So if you're taking advantage of workforce optimization type tools, you can manage them from here as well. Configuration is scripting, outbound programming, and multimedia. So when I say it's a one-stop shop for your entire contact center, it is a one-stop shop for your entire contact center for administration and management. The partition and management piece here, the access, this is really defining authentication and authorization privileges for users who access CCMA. So it's really kind of talking about your administrators and how you authorize them to access this tool. Configuration, you can provision and manage sites and servers that make up the contact here. Talking about managing skill sets and agent creation, real-time reporting, and historical reporting. So here's another screenshot. If you're ever wondering what this looks like, if you've heard about it before, there's a lot of good screenshots here. And this is if you're managing agents, if you're a supervisor, this is actually managing agents and skills, some of the drag and drop environment, and some of the ease of setting this up. Most contact centers that deploy this, typically the supervisors are managing this piece themselves for the agents and setting that up because it's so easy. I mentioned some of the real-time reporting dashboards. Here's a good example. You can kind of see some of the reports that are kicked out. They got all the pretty colors and stuff. They're graphical, so they look good, but the key is the actual real-time data that they're gathering. If you're doing real-time reporting now, and it may be a separate platform for you or separate licensing for you, understand that this is out of the box and included within the Avaya Aura Contact Center. Oh, and you can choose your colors. Historical reporting, I mentioned being able to do historical reports. Today, if you're doing historical reports, again, probably in a separate reporting type of server engine environment, you're looking at 121 standard report templates available. So most contact center environments fall within that 121. There are, contact centers that do a lot of custom reports, and I'll show you about creating those in the creation wizard. It's very simple, kind of much like the SCE. Notice email notification of scheduled report completion. So maybe you have end of the month reports in your contact center, end of the quarter, and maybe, I don't know if you guys have ever experienced this, but in some bigger contact centers, the reporting servers and engines actually get bogged down during that time period because of the size of the reports being ran all at the same time. Within this reporting tool, you can schedule those reports to run. Maybe you can set up a process to stagger all those reports that are running at one time. But it gives you that email notification when they're done, so you don't have to keep checking on your reports. Also, outputs, right? So if you're utilizing any type of consolidation tool of your customer data or just analytics of your call center. Obviously, Crystal supported Excel, HTTP, Word, text, CSV. Most of the standard output formats that you would integrate with are supported from here. So very flexible for integrating to other platforms. CSR reporting, right? Contact summary reporting. It's granular. There's 7 templates for the customer contact summary reporting, and you can use the creation wizard to build these out as custom reports as well. But most of the standard voice type reporting, like length of call and transfers and things like that, are all included out of the box in here. So it gives you that functionality right away. Creation wizard, I mentioned it. Maybe some of you have been talking with Avaya about this or have seen it, but a lot of people have not seen it. So there's a screenshot here. It's kind of how it looks. I know it's a little blurred, but really it's one license. So the creation wizard is a separate license within the platform, but it's one. So you could have 50 supervisors and only purchase the one license to support all of them for this. And this is how you would build your custom reports. Again, it has a guide wizard to kind of guide you through that creation, much like the scripting, right? Much like the SEE. And it's very flexible and easy for your supervisors to use. Kind of moving forward here, the Communications Control Toolkit / Advanced CTI platform. I mentioned before this CCT piece here that provides your CTI type development and functionality going forward within here. If you notice, it's based on Microsoft.NET, and if you have some skilled application developers, this is kind of where their sandbox would be. It's a core component. So if you are doing anything with the Avaya Aura Contact Center, you're going to have CCT. And the reason for that, if you notice right here, -1, the Contact Center Agent Desktop is a CCT client. Well, why do we do that? Why do we make the desktop dependent on the CCT? Well, I mentioned before that this desktop integrates not only just to Avaya, but to any multimedia type of data from any other type of application. You can present it to your agent real time to handle your customer. So having CCT for that type of middleware to make that integration happen is how we do it. And that's what CCT really is. If you look down here, CCT, simple development and powerful integrations, things like desktop and applications. Maybe you have a call control toolbar for your agent. I mentioned call recording and things like that before. Screen pops. Business applications comes with native CRM connectors for most standard CRM databases. So CCT is really kind of that piece that is bringing all of the open source multimedia interactions with your agent to your customer. This just takes you through some of the programming language here and some of the APIs. Most of it's object-oriented .NET for the call control API. You're looking at .NET, CLR, and all .NET languages like Visual Basic, C++. These are pretty standard programming languages. If you have application developers in your environment today, they're probably very familiar with these. Notice the service-oriented architecture referenced here, SOA, and that's typically Java and Linux. Also, again, going back to our CCMA, the one management application, your CCT management of it is also included in that. So applications that are running that utilize the CCT are manageable from the CCMA. I think you saw when we showed that screenshot, the call recording piece. Well, that's a CCT integration, but it's being managed from CCMA. So again, one-stop shop management for your entire contact center. Typical customers for CCT is pretty much everybody, right? So if you're an Avaya customer and you're doing contact center, if you're doing any type of screen pop, any type of database integration, if you're doing anything outside of handling a traditional voice call and not using the Avaya Agent Desktop, CCT is what's for you. So if you're using the Avaya Aura Agent Desktop, if you're doing any type of screen pop, if you're doing any type of custom application development and integrating to any type of database, any type of multimedia type functionality within your environment to your agent desktop, you have to use CCT. Now this is really kind of nice as well. Once you have CCT in your environment, maybe you're looking for, how do I make a SQL database integration? Well, if you're a Avaya Dev Connect partner, you can go out there and there's thousands of actual APIs available, already made for you to load into your CCT environment. So there's a good chance that whatever type of integration you're trying to do with CCT, that it probably has already been done or exists by somebody else, and it's already in the Dev Connect, the Dev Connect file for CCT. So again, bringing users and developers together through Dev Connect, kind of a collaboration of people instead of just technology going forward for Avaya, just makes it a lot easier for you to manage and administer your own environment. I've referenced this this agent desktop quite a bit in the last couple pieces here, and it's a very, very, very important piece, right? So when we talk about contact center, we're really talking about how is my customer impacted, and that customer could be a sales customer. It could be internal. Your customer could be your own HR department or your own legal department. It could just be your end users, or like I said, if you have sales and you're selling something, or you have insurance, things like that, you could have customer contact outside of your internal. The thing is the experience management, and that's what this agent desktop really supports, is the blending of voice and multimedia all into one agent desktop, real-time data feeds to it, which is just phenomenal for your customer experience. You can notice here, this is what the standard kind of One-X style, and I mentioned One-X agent earlier. Yes, this actual desktop client has a very similar look to One-X agent if you ever used it, but the functionality is far greater. It supports the standard, phone functionality, log in, log out, busy, not ready, the standard agent things, the aux codes, the after work numbers, things like that, but then also your work items like voice, email, web chat, instant messaging, outbound, fax, SMS, and video. Video is in there today. It's no longer future. Fax is kind of interesting. I'll show you that in a minute. If you have customers that work directly with certain agents and they're faxing information back and forth, how about the fax being just delivered right to the agent desktop as just another work item? So you can see here kind of the work handling piece here, accepting, not accepting the voice contact. You can see kind of how this whole real estate works for just voice. So if you're just doing voice, this is what your agent desktop looks like. Obviously, this whole actual application is customizable. This API is completely open to everybody. And you can see here some of the customer contact codes and things like that. So if you're used to like a One-X agent or an IP agent, some of the older Avaya remote agent type of functionality, it looks very similar. So here's where we get into some of the custom functionality, right? The screen pops. The screen pops with third-party internal and external screens. So this product actually has built into it custom screen pop functionality already. And you can see the screen pop data right here on the database. So extremely easy to set up, right? You have your CCT set up for your integration to the database. Within your work handling, you have this skill set for that screen pop, and you're popping with third parties. As long as it's SIP communication to and from the contact center, you're going to be able to screen pop with it. And so this is what that screen pop looks like on the agent desktop. Notice your voice piece is still on top. Now we're starting to get into more of the real estate of this actual application on the desktop. Like I said, screen pop any contact. You could screen pop a regular voice contact with just the caller ID if you want with this functionality. It's up to you how much data you want to extract from internal or external databases or applications to put into this screen pop, or how little you want to. But either way, you can screen pop any contact type that you like. I mentioned fax capabilities, and this is where we're talking about the agent could be handling a voice call, maybe expecting a fax from another customer, and that fax comes through to their agent desktop while they're handling a voice call, and maybe they're able to process something at the same time they're handling this voice call. Maybe this is just a question and answer session on the phone. Again, driving efficiency with a unified agent desktop is going to increase customer experience, which obviously would hopefully increase, if it's internal, maybe that simply increases just the review of the contact center or customer service environment. But if it's in a sales environment, or if it's actually a customer-facing type of environment, you would hope that would drive not just the reputation of your company, but some revenue for you as well. So all these things that this agent desktop is doing is all geared around experience management and agent efficiency. Web chat. The web chat is already built into the client. Okay. Obviously, you have to build your integrations with your workflow, right? So you have to build a workflow to generate a web chat. But the actual real estate piece of that is already out of the box included here, and you can support the callback functionality, right? So if somebody's on trying to do a web chat, all agents are busy right now, you can't handle their web chat, would you like an agent to call you back? They click that button, put in their data, and it's going to pop to a web chat session for an agent when they become available to call that customer at X, Y, and Z number. So all that functionality right out of the box on the desktop. The context-sensitive instant message handling here. This functionality is available on the Nortel side, not yet on the Avaya side, and it's the ability to do context instant messaging. So again, if you've had 10, 15, 20 instant message sessions with a customer and they re-engage you at any time, being able to apply that historical knowledge to the current conversation is what this is talking about through instant messaging. Enhancing the agent productivity. I think the biggest thing here to keep in mind is that you can handle 5 simultaneous contacts. So that could be 5 voice calls, that could be 2 voice calls and 3 emails, 1 voice call, 1 email, 1 instant message, 1 Facebook. However many ways you're contacting your customers, your agent can work 5 of them at one time. So again, driving agent efficiency. If there's a voice call going on and the agent isn't having to do any, let's say, application work for that customer, maybe they're just asking questions, well, they could probably start engaging and working on something they were working for on an email customer or a web chat customer. Having that ability to be flexible with your agent work handling is driving the agent efficiency with the desktop. Now this is huge right here. Some of you today might be using a what they call a wall board. Maybe you're using a physical wall board actually on the wall in your contact center. Maybe you're doing a software-based version. But traditionally, that has been a separate tool, right? That wall board, whether it's software-based, whether it's on the wall, that's a separate tool. Out-of-the-box wall board for the agents. So agents know when they're not handling enough calls within an hour to meet. If you have quota-based agent handling, some people do. Maybe they're not meeting their quota. They're going to know. It's going to be on the screen. If 5 other agents in their skill set just logged out or just went into ops work mode to go to the bathroom, well, probably adding agent number 6 isn't smart. They probably need to wait till they see that number come back. The wall board has that functionality. Being able to push messages to the wall board, right, as a supervisor. Hey, log into this skill, that type of stuff. Being able to see if their skill is overmanned, undermanned, what those thresholds are, it's all on the agent desktop. They can kind of manage their work handling if you have that type of environment. So it was a good look at the agent desktop, and I hope kind of the message you got out of that was the efficiency that desktop drives for your contact center, whether you're just doing voice or doing multimedia and fax integrations and video and all the complex things. The key there is the efficiency that the desktop will drive with your agent environment. The Contact Center Multimedia Manager. This is really the piece that's managing multimedia engagements. Web chat, outbound, instant messaging, faxes, scan documents, email, things like that. This is the piece that manages those components, and this is really coming from Nortel again, right? This is a piece out of the NGCC that did this for Nortel. And there's a couple key components here. The bigger components here are the email manager, the web communication manager, the outbound, and the Aura desktop multimedia agent desktop application. So the Aura desktop is one unified desktop, but you have a voice only and a multimedia version. So depending on which version you are doing with your contact center depends on the licensing that you buy for that. So notice here, your email manager is processing emails from mail servers and managing conversations. The web communication is enabling web users and web chat. If anybody's familiar with the product called Interaction Center from Avaya, that was Avaya's kind of really multimedia handling type of tool. If you remember, you had to build all these workflows to do email management and web management and things like that with that tool. Well, this is much easier. This comes over from the Nortel side. But it's the same type of tool. This is just a graphical view of the different multimedia type functionality you can have with your customers and how it all integrates together. You can see some of the email processing going on over here, the from and to addressing, the key group marketing. We'll break into some of that too as we go forward here in a few minutes. You do have the option for auto responses, right? So you can build like an auto response knowledge base within the platform here. Depending on certain key groups or topics that come through, you can just auto response, keep that away from your agents, keep them handling live customers if that's your goal, and moving forward. So it's just a graphical view of all the different handling going on here. So some of the key functionality is obviously the unified routing and reporting of email context. So again, out of the box reporting and the routing of it is already, we already know that that's a big piece of email, getting it routed correctly to the right agent group to handle that email. The agent desktop, or agent desktop, has the email editor already built into it, much like if you opened up your Outlook or your Lotus, that type of stuff. Being able to write emails, forward emails, send emails, that type of stuff. It's all on the agent desktop. It's all a unified agent desktop for a reason to handle all of that. Reporting, you can track the agent performance and report on the multimedia service levels. So if you have service levels set up for your email environment, being able to report on those is kind of critical. And then obviously you have an email manager that polls boxes for incoming emails. So we have this polling engine here, sitting here, kind of polling your POP3 environment. Maybe it's an Exchange, maybe it's a Lotus Domino, maybe it's a GroupWise, whatever that is, where that email or web traffic is coming from. You have these polling devices kind of talking to it, pulling in emails. Now, this is a good routing tree here, and it's good because if you're doing email today, maybe you're unsure on what's mandatory to get the email routed correctly and what's not. You can take a look here. What's in red would be mandatory to get this email routed to the correct group, and some things that are optional. But the optional things are very important too, because if you're doing anything more than just an email address goes to this group, if you're doing things like filtering by keywords or by groups, or maybe it's a, if it includes this word, don't send it here or send it here type of routing. Those are all optional things that can be built into the email handling workflow, and you can really take advantage of granular email routing. I mentioned earlier the fax. You guys saw the fax being delivered there on the agent desktop. Obviously, the agent desktop also supports voicemail and scan documents too. So if you do have voicemail for either an agent group or maybe each agent has their own personal voicemail, you can receive those voicemails on the agent desktop, and they can handle those while working with other customers as well. The outbound piece. If you're doing outbound today, it's probably through some type of outbound dialer. Maybe you have a software platform doing it for you, but it's probably not out of the box with your current call center solution. It's probably something you purchased on top of what you had already existing. The Aura Contact Center has outbound built into it, preview and progressive. And one of the key functionalities is the actual management tool here. So being able to actually build outbound campaigns, really focus on a contact group. Maybe today your marketing team may do outbound dialing, I don't know, outbound emailing, mass emailing, mass calling for marketing or sales reasons. If you're doing that today, being able to define campaigns and really get down to some granular contact with those outbound customers is what really drives this platform. It's huge ROI. If you're doing outbound today with the traditional dialer type of platform, the ROI is pretty big when you engage in the contact center outbound or contact center. I would urge you to look into it. But it's basically a software-based dialer with campaign management built in. This is a look at the web chat communications manager. So I showed you kind of on the agent desktop how these web chats are handled, or how web chat has a piece of real estate on the agent desktop. The concept here is pretty simple. If you're doing web chat today, or you've done it yourself with maybe like your department store billing for something, you're chatting online with agents, or you can request a telephone callback. So again, if they go to initiate a web chat, you can offer them the option, would you like an agent to call you back, instead of this person sitting maybe in queue or waiting for an available agent for web chat. The agent desktop is where that actual request comes to. So if it's a web chat, we're going to screen pop a web chat session for an available agent that has the web chat skill, or if it's a request for a callback, we're going to pop a web chat session with a callback request if the agent has that skill. So that's kind of the basic functionality of the web chat piece of this. This gives you a good idea of what the agent sees for web contacts. So again, this is a pop. This is a pop-up. It's not. It's on the agent desktop, but it's not sitting there actually, holding a piece of real estate. It's a web chat session that initiates through a screen pop. You can also see that you can do video conferencing via the web pop. So that's something new with the Aura Contact Center, the video conferencing with your contacts if possible. Maybe if you're a troubleshooting call center or something technical, that could have actually a lot of benefits to you. I've been mentioning throughout the presentation here, through the Avaya Core as well as the Contact Center, this open standards, open interfaces, services-oriented architecture, and web services, which is really kind of the market demand going forward. But we're going to look at it a little bit deeper here. Why? I guess the question is why. For so long we had this hub and spoke model. What made this customer demand for this service-oriented architecture, and really what is it? And if you look here on the right, I think the concept becomes pretty clear, especially with that guy in the middle with that apple. So some of the marketing campaigns that are out there, like I've got an app for that, which is really your iPhone, and if you need GPS, there's a GPS app. If you need to look at your bank account, you got a bank account app right there. If you need to access your Microsoft or your work email, you have it right here on your iPhone, right? That type of functionality of I've got a demand, you give me a service, and you bring it to me versus me going to it is what's created this market demand. And we've been doing it on our personal devices for years now. And what Avaya is doing is taking that and putting into our core communications enterprise environment, right? The ability for flexible interoperability between information, databases, and applications is what this really comes down to. And you can see here also, the Windows, right? I'm in the cloud, that whole thing. I'm in the cloud. Oh, I'm in the cloud and everything's coming to me. Those marketing campaigns are what's driving this market demand. We could talk about Droid as well. Most of you are probably familiar with Droid. If you've seen the commercials, open a can of does, right? That's referring to gets it done. It's referring to being able to respond to any demand with an application. So, Avaya, again, well, let's put a big can of does right in the middle of your enterprise and handle those types of that type of communications from your enterprise core versus your edge device. Taking a look here at some of the capabilities, basic, administration functionality here: query, add, remove, list agents and supervisors, assign, remove skill sets from and to agents. So if you're doing this through the web service applications, now you're talking about being able to share data, right? And sharing data is how we drive customer experience. The ability to share data from agent to CRM to merchandise database to ticket database to salesperson's CRM tool, whatever that is, being able to share that data so that these applications can respond real time to the customer demand. It's how we drive that customer experience. And that's what this is talking about here, utilizing web service to create that type of open integration to the core of your contact center. Again, the SCE environment, the service creation environment, is where this happens. And some of you may be familiar with the term ACE. That's actually a web service environment that is added on to your Avaya Aura core environment, to your session manager, system manager environment. That's also a web service development tool for UC type applications. There's built-in Microsoft and BlackBerry and iPhone type connectors in there for web services. So if you're familiar with ACE, ACE is also a web service development tool on the UC side. We're talking about web services right here within our contact center. We're really talking about doing those through a workflow in the service creation environment. And if you notice here, it's talking about third-party web services from within SCE workflow. So calling all these other integration points for data. I need data for my customer. I need to know, my customer asked me their account number. I need to know what that is, CRM database, that type of stuff. Bring in that data to your agent so that they can handle the customer real time and provide that type of data. And it's flexible and it's interoperable. This is really expanding some of the enterprise functionality. If you're familiar with the healthcare space, there's a lot of pushing of scans and remote monitoring device type data from their health information systems out to, let's say, doctors that may work at 4 or 5 different hospitals or offices, or maybe the doctor's on vacation, and being able to push that type of integration of customer account data with HIS data and pushing it out to the edge device. Maybe it's an iPhone, maybe it's an iPad, is some of the ways they're taking advantage of this today within the healthcare facility. So web services is the direction everything is going in the market. This is talking more about it. You can see some of the supervisors and agent skill assignments. Again, you're doing this through web services. If you've ever had to program like 100 or 200 agents and you're not utilizing some type of additional bulk load or mass import type of tool, you know how time consuming that can be. If you're doing it through SOA and the CCMA, notice that adding agents and supervisors, you can do bulk imports here through your CCMA environment. So if you need to add 100 agents, you can add them all at once and create assignments for them through to the SOA environment. I talked about the outbound here. Obviously, you can also do outbound campaigns, and SOA provides third-party applications with outbound campaigns. So I don't know what that third-party application would be for you. It could possibly be integration with a social media environment, creating an outbound contact within Twitter or LinkedIn or Facebook, and then also managing that campaign and looking at the reporting for it within CCMM. So notice that the SOA environment is tied together with all these core pieces of our contact center so that we can create that integration between all the pieces of our contact center that we already have in these third-party applications. And here's another example here. We're doing, queuing, right? So we talked about queuing being the responsibility of the CCMS. Well, what if we built third-party applications in our SOA environment that integrate that queuing with another third-party queuing device, right? So you can see here, this is kind of, up in the air type of thing. But this virtual contact center, having, queues coming in from all types of different environments, not just your Avaya contact center queue, but actually, I don't know, maybe there's a contact center on the other side of the world that's using another third-party application for queuing, and being able to put that customer in your queue, right? That's what this SOA is trying to create, that open integration between platforms. And then you also obviously have the historical reporting through the CCMS with the web services obviously enabled with it. So you can see how the SOA environment is pulling all the third-party integrations together with our core server environment. And another one of those core server environments is the media application server. And this is really kind of where you have to understand that things like in traditional Avaya, well, you probably get these, but announcements, greetings, those are all media type engagements, right? And so the mass is really where all that will exist going forward into the contact center. It's going to manage the announcements and greetings, and it's all SIP based, and it's out of the box for Contact Center 6.0. Again, the mass is a software-based media application, and it's processing all types of media. You can see here some of the advanced features with SIP TLS and some of the voice XML. So if you're used to voice XML with some type of speech right now that you're doing, some type of IVR applications, obviously it supports all that. So again, applications that are feature-based, like announcements, IVR type functionality, things like that are going to be responsibility of the mass to manage going forward. Some of the media announcements, I mean, this is pretty general here. Most of you probably do announcements today in some way, and announcements will continue going forward. And also keep in mind music on hold. A lot of you probably do music on hold. But now, you're talking about a RAN, recorded announcements, and music for hold. There are some canned media out of the box, like ringback and busy tones, things like that. All those are considered media going forward. And then obviously the CCSM here, the Contact Center Services for mass. It installs the services for the Contact Center on the mass, and that's announcement, conference, and dialogue. Also keep in mind for media services, right? Media services, each media service is a session. So when we talk about SIP sessions and total maximum capacity of sessions, if you look here, maximum capacity per mass is currently 700 sessions. So that's 700 concurrent SIP sessions. So your agent, if they're on the phone with somebody, if they're queuing a call, if they've got music on hold going, each agent could be using, maybe 2 to 3 sessions. It's something that if you engage in an architectural discussion with a business partner or Avaya, you want to ask about this. Make sure you're licensed and you're sized correctly to support the capacity of call volume and media functionality that you're going to be taking advantage with the Aura Contact Center. Reliability and resilience. This is huge in the contact center. Everybody wants to know, how am I going to stay up? What happens if I have a failover event? What's going to happen here? And if you look, you're really talking about hot standby scenarios. And the reason for that is the speed of bringing these contact centers back online. It's very easy, and again, the 35 minutes to bring you back online. There's also things like the agent state is maintained for voice on CCMS and CCT. There's no need to cycle, log in, log out. The agent desktop pop-ups restart with no-touch recovery. So you're really talking about bringing in hot standby services to bring the whole contact center back online. It's a matter of minutes. That's if you're completely down. So notice, though, for your customers, you don't actually lose any customer contact here on the voice side. There's some high availability options that were built within the Nortel piece. Some of you may be familiar with it because of your Nortel background, which is kind of the high availability piece, utilizing shadowing of databases. So you can see here the main campus with all of your contact center pieces and the shadowing of these databases to create a survivable contact center that is available on the Nortel side today. Right, so especially talking about the AML piece, which again was that piece that allowed legacy Nortel type of equipment to integrate to that next generation contact center piece. You can see here active hot solution for CCMS and CCT, which is really the two, like, if you had to break down your contact center and all the multimedia stuff, that's great, but when you're in a down situation, you want to make sure you can pick up the phone. You want to make sure that your customers can get contact with somebody. And so having the ability to fail over your CCMS, right, which is handling that voice routing and scripting and queuing, and then the CCT so that you can actually still handle it on the desktop if you need to. and integrate voice with a third-party app if you had to. All of that is active in the Avaya Aura Contact Center. So, priority queuing and priority failover for voice, and then there's hot standby failover for multimedia functionality. Gives you kind of an always touching your customer type of environment. This goes into some of the routing of this high availability option for the Nortel customer, and you can see active agent with the CTI screen pop, and you have CCMS1 and CCT1, but then you also have your CCMS2 and CCT2. Again, the shadowing of the databases is what creates that high availability option between primary and branch contact center environments. So this takes a look at just kind of overall what we've been talking about through the contact center piece here, and that's this virtualized contact center, understanding where all these applications sit. Are they virtualized? Are they hardened servers? Where all these IT managed applications are. This just gives you a good kind of graphical view of all of this. These are just a couple questions here. Who am I? Interface with your customer's email server and insert incoming emails into the open queue. I interface with your customer's web server and insert web chats into universal workflow. I push contacts to agent desktops. It's the all of that is out of the box functionality with the Aura Contact Center 6.0. You can see some of the highlights here for the flexibility with the SCE environment, the web services, the SOA creation, really kind of creating that I got an app for that environment within your enterprise versus at the edge device like your mobile iPhone or something like that is really crucial. The easy to implement workflows, out of the box canned workflows. If you're not familiar with developing workflows, it's a great way to learn. The holistic universal view workflows, that's that networking piece with the CS1000 and all that, and then the feature-rich agent desktop, which I showed you for efficiency of an agent, being able to handle all of those media types on one desktop application really drives efficiency in customer contact. So I went through, because of time, I kind of sped through a lot of pieces of that, and I know we're over right now. Is there anybody that has questions directly relating to this this contact center piece? I know Dan is kind of gathering up some questions that may still be related to the other portion, and what I'll do is respond in an email to those, or I'll pick up the phone and give you a call. Is there anybody that has a question around this contact center piece today? Okay, so I do have a question here, and sorry, I don't know if it was asked during the middle of the presentation, but hopefully you're still on. I know we've lost a couple participants, but it says we have a Nortel CC version 6, so Nortel Contact Center version 6 environment with all the bells and whistles, including call pilot access ports for on-hold treatment for voice calls. We also have an IVR Paraphonics MPS 500. Where does the IVR tie into the AACC version 6.1 environment? So we talked a little bit about the mass, right? And the mass is the piece of the application that going forward is going to support your IVR type functionality. And that's going to be in version 6.1 as well. So version 6.1, I know we're talking about May 2011. Really the biggest piece of 6.1 is the blending of voice and multimedia processing on the back end, right? So today in the 6.0, the voice piece and the multimedia piece are kind of processed separately and then blended on the agent desktop. That blending is now going to happen during the processing phase and then served to the agent desktop. So that's kind of the biggest difference between the two environments today. But in terms of IVR functionality, your mass is where your IVR functionality is going to exist. It's going to support the IVR type protocols that are being used to create your interactive voice environment going forward. All right. I don't see any more questions coming in here for the contact center. Again, if you asked questions earlier and we didn't get to them because of time, I apologize. I will try and respond to them via email and get in contact with you because I want to make sure I get all your questions asked. If you do think of any contact center questions that might come up, it looks like Dan is going to send my my email contact out. I'm happy to answer any email that you send. So I appreciate everybody's time today. I know we went over, and that can be difficult for people, so I appreciate those of you that stuck through it. And I hope this was informational and useful for you. Thank you.